Good morning. We have a lot to cover, so we're going to jump right in. We have shared experiences in this country over the past several years that showcases not only the essential nature of childcare or the care children receive before the age of 5, whether from a family member, center, church basement, pre-K, or all of the above, but also the developmental supports children have that set them up to thrive and be happy. You are in for a treat today with conversations about early childhood education from the perspective of a child, as well as what it means for working families and our economy. As the executive director of the First 5 Years Fund, where we advocate at the federal level for investments in policies, I couldn't be happier to be here and to know that Engage is taking on the range of these issues. As we think about Engage's trajectory for today, we are starting with the babies and an awareness that brains are built and grow through touch, talk, sight, and sound in early childhood experiences. During the first 5 years, a child's brain is at its most flexible, making this a critical period for learning and growth. The stats, figures, and findings could go on all day. Let's instead hear from not just a panel of experts, but the panel of experts. First, my good friend, and at many times in the past, co-conspirator Katie Hamm, who's serving as the Deputy Assistant for Early Childhood Development in the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services, Bowyer, who is the President and CEO of the National Children's Museum, and Erica Williams, the Executive Director of DC Fiscal Policy Institute. All right, we're going to start. Katie, can you share with us what initiatives you're excited about in your office as it relates to early childhood development?
Sure. Thanks so much for having me. So what I'm really excited about is a couple weeks ago, the president put his budget out, and there is a $600 billion proposal to expand childcare and preschool in this country to every community. It is the largest ever proposal that any president has ever put forward on early childhood. And I think it makes a really strong statement that when we think about education, when we think about the life trajectory, we need to be putting early care and education first. The early care and education system is what allows parents to go to work. It's what supports this critical period of child development. And it's what allows our economy to run when parents have access to early care and education programs. So we're really excited about that. We also just launched a new early care and education workforce center that will partner with our grantees, states, tribes, territories, and local programs to look at early childhood compensation, which is a chronic problem that undermines our ability to have a strong early care and education system. And it'll also look at the workforce pipeline and building a diverse workforce pipeline. Right now we have an early care and education workforce shortage that has not recovered from the pandemic. And it means classrooms are closed, it means parents can't find care, and it really comes down to compensation and the working conditions for these folks who do the most critical job in our country.
Thanks, Katie. Erica, same to you. What are you seeing in DC that is helping to boost long-term outcomes in early childhood development?
Yeah, thanks so much for having me as well, and it's great to be in a room full of people thinking about how we get to women's economic security and well-being starting from childhood. We in the district have actually made several types of investments in early childhood development that we know are going to pay off over the long term. Many of you may not know that we have universal pre-K for 3 and 4-year-olds here in the district, so that is something that we put in place in 2008 through our public school system and our charter schools. And we're building on that now with our Birth to 3 law, which really promises equity at birth here in the district. So what that means is that we have a goal of comparable pay for early educators who are in our childcare workforce and caring for our very youngest children. We have a goal of making childcare affordable so that no family is paying more than 10% of their income on those expenses. And then we also are wrapping around in those programs home visiting and other kinds of health and support, parental supports for our families with very young children that are struggling on low incomes. So we're really excited about that, and we have taken a major first step in the compensation program, making sure that our child care workers that are taking care of our babies are actually getting paid for the credentials and substantial skill that they bring to that work. And that started last year with stipends of up to $14,000 for those workers, but now they're going to see permanent pay raises that put them on par with early educators in our K through 12 system. So that's pretty exciting. We're also very much investing in income boosts for low-income families. We're doing that through some public pilot programs that are really taking a look at how do we support moms with kids, young kids, that are really struggling to get by and have lots of barriers to work in the district. And so we have a couple of public pilots, one that wraps around, is cash assistance, but also wraps around that training and workforce development support, and also holds those families harmless when moms start working and earning more, so that if they're losing their public benefits, they're getting compensated for that and not losing. We want to hold people while they're transitioning into work. And then another pilot that is directing cash to moms with infants or expecting moms. So those are exciting programs, and those will be evaluated because they're public programs, and so we'll have a lot of good evidence about what we can do moving forward with that. And then we're using our tax credits to also deliver cash to low-income working families. So we just in 2021 expanded our earned income tax credit so that by 2026 it will be 100% of the federal credit. So just to give you an example of what that means, a single mom earning about $15,000, if with 3 kids, she would receive a federal tax credit of about $7,000, and we will match that fully. So that mom saw her income go from $15,000 to $29,000, and that's a pretty big deal. She's still going to struggle on low income in the district, but that's pretty life-changing, and we know what the research shows about income boosts for kids in poor and low-income families, that it can really radically change their life trajectories, help them do better, go further in school, work and earn more as adults. So I think we're really excited to see all these things come together and hope that we get to see the payoff in the years to come.
Thanks, Erica. We often forget that a lot of the really great stuff happening is happening right here in our hometown. Crystal, you sent your career focused on serving children, most recently through the magic of museums. Can you share a little more about this journey and what you're seeing?
Yeah, so thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited to be here today, and this is the most stylish room of any event I've been to in DC in a very long time. I have spent about 20 years working with children all over the world in different capacities in education, and about 5.5 years ago, I was crazy enough to move to Washington, D.C. from Chicago to help reopen the National Children's Museum. So people who are from here, people who work in the museum industry knew the story, but the museum had failed twice. So it was a big undertaking. They had $300,000 in the bank. They were congressionally designated, but we are not part of the Smithsonian, so we don't receive federal funding. We don't even have a federal building. In fact, we're paying $1.2 million a year right now to the federal government for rent in our previously empty space. So just a lot of hurdles to overcome, right? But it was the opportunity to build a children's museum in the way I really thought it should be built, which meant that we were going to build it as a science and technology center and a children's museum in one, because we know that STEM drop-off, I know there's a STEM panel later today, but that's happening at the age of 12 or 14 years old. And so for far too long in our country, unfortunately, we haven't been focused on STEM education for young children. We're not capturing and sparking that interest young. So then we're just playing catch up, right, in middle school. And I think the thing I'm really excited about right now is what we're hearing out of the Department of Education is that they're focused on infancy through 3rd grade now. So last year, we had the Competes Act that was passed. It's all about STEM education. We're finally focusing on really engaging these kids in STEM younger so that hopefully we don't have that drop off. And I think we see it every single day at the museum. We see more kids in that museum every day than most public schools in the city. And we're seeing that spark, right? We're lighting them up. Obviously, in a museum, you have the social emotional learning, the play-based learning that is really, really critical for child development, for early childhood education. and we're sparking that joy in them. So I think we don't know what home is like for every child, but we know when they come to us, they're having so much fun. So I think there's a lot to be hopeful about, and really glad that we got this place back open, not just for the kids in DC, but kids from all over the country. We've had visitors from all 50 states and I think 6 different continents now. We're seeing those kids here in DC and hopefully sparking something in them.
That's exciting, and thank you as a parent in DC. We talked a little bit about the workforce, the predominantly women who are caring for our children, and we know there's so much research and the play and the curiosity and all of the things that go into early childhood development, but it really comes down to that connection and that person that's with them every day, or people who are with them every day. So I do want to spend a couple more minutes on that workforce piece because it is such a critical element of this early childhood development equation. And Katie, I'm going to let you pick up. I know you started to, and pick up a little bit there, and then maybe we can go through the panel on that.
How many of you have cared for 3 infants at the same time and thought, I really hit it out of the park, I did a great job? Anybody cared for a room of 8 toddlers at the same time? No. Okay. So this is what these 2 million women who run our early care and education system are doing every day. It is skilled work. It is not work that we could do. It is skilled work to care for young children. And before the pandemic, it paid more in this country to care for animals than children. So until we change that culture, until we value these women and put them at the center of the conversation and compensate them well, we're not going to change things. And we're going to continue to have a precarious early care and education system. Typically, a child care budget, 60 to 80% of the budget is going to labor costs, and parents can't afford to pay more. So if you want to create a stable early care and education system, you have to have a public investment that is supporting that workforce, that's providing the stability that families need, that the economy needs, so that families can go to work, that children are supported, and get that early start, get that nurturing care early on. We have proposals out there to do that. It's just a matter of building that will and creating that culture change where it's at the top of the priority list. And we came very close last summer, but didn't quite get it over the finish line. So I think we know how to get there. We know what our workforce needs. We know that the history of underpaying people, that care work is undervalued. So I really think the fact that it's central to the conversation in rooms like this is critical to changing that culture, to getting it at the top of the political agenda. And I hope that is one thing that we can all take from this conversation is a commitment to thinking about these women who are doing the work, who worked through the pandemic when schools closed. They did virtual school. They risked their own health, their own safety to keep going and keep open. And really were at the front line of the pandemic and continue to be the force of our economy. So I hope that's one thing we can take from this conversation.
Here to all that, and I think it's also important to remember that these are women who are also raising their own families and breadwinners in their own families, and so we want to make sure that they're earning enough to take care of their own kids. So here, I mentioned we have a compensation program here that we are implementing that dramatically raises the wages of our early educators in the child care sector caring for our 0 to 3 population. And so that's about 3,000 women, mostly Black and Latina, who are going to see a big pay raise. And just to give you an example of that, the median prior to this compensation program, the median wage was about $31,000 a year. So that's the middle. So that means 50% of them earn less than that and 50% more. Now the range is going to be from about $36,000 to $66,000, and the $66,000 is if you have a bachelor's degree and sort of are on par with credentialing of like an early childhood educator in our pre-K program. So that's pretty exciting, and so some of these women are going to see their pay even double from where it's been, which is very exciting. The other thing we're thinking about because it's not just about what comes through your paycheck, right? We also need to think about things like health care. So we've used some of the funds that we set aside for this pay increase to work with the DC Health Exchange to help childcare providers offer their workforce health care coverage. And that is not just for the 3,000 women that I just mentioned that are caring for the 0 to 3 kids. It's for all the workers in those child care centers. So some of them are already offering health coverage. Some of them can, but others aren't. And so we're trying to help connect them to the DC Health Exchange and subsidize that so that folks are getting the full compensation that they need to get by.
Crystal, I'm going to skip over this, and I'm going to turn to you to tell us what you're hopeful about. What are we hopeful and excited about? And is there a call to action for this room?
Yeah, I mean, I think I'm hopeful about a lot of things right now. I think that there are obviously many areas where we're trying to recover from the pandemic, but I truly believe that one of the silver linings will be an entire generation of kids that are more interested in STEM education and thinking about ways every day that they can use science to affect real change. I know I have my own chief beta tester at home, my 9-year-old son, who is asking me questions about vaccines and things that he just never would have thought of before. I also have a 2-year-old toddler, and I can tell you I never feel like I'm totally killing it. So I have so much respect for the early childhood centers. I would just say, too, that maybe as a call to action, because I know there are so many female leaders in the room here that are employing other women, too, I think just demonstrating having that balance with your own family is really important. We're fortunate in so many ways in the District of Columbia with various programs, but we do have a paid family leave program here in DC, and running a small nonprofit museum, we don't have a paid family leave program. We have short-term disability, and but the District of Columbia provides 8 weeks of maternity and 8 weeks of paternity leave paid for its citizens here. So I took 12 weeks with my family. I remember telling my boss in Chicago when I worked at the Museum of Science and Industry that I was going to take 12 weeks when I had my son. And she said, I only took 6. And I was like, that's awesome, but I'm going to take 12, I think demonstrating that balance and honestly encouraging your partners too as well. My husband is an executive at a finance company, and I said, if you don't take the 8 weeks that they're paying you, I don't know how that demonstrates any kind of fairness in the workplace. The associates on your team, it needs to be both the men and women doing this if we're going to co-parent. So, I think a lot of things I'm hopeful about, but this generation of partners, I think, are more willing to do that. My husband did, so kudos to him. But I think there's a lot of great things happening.
Same to you. What are you hopeful about? What's your call to action?
I think we're seeing more attention to early care and education and the child care crisis in this country. There's regular media reports about it. We're seeing the president talk about this. We're seeing a lot of members of Congress, State of the Union, a lot of people brought early care and education providers with them. So I think we can build on that momentum. And hopefully, I think in the next 10 years, we will get something across the finish line.
Me too, I hope so. Erica?
I'm just, I'm hopeful because we have all these efforts underway. I think we have the tools at our disposal, and I think we're seeing them put to use more. And I'm hopeful that, at some point we really, double, triple down on all of it and disrupt some of the cycles of poverty, of economic hardship and struggle that hold back so many kids, hold back so many girls in the country. And if we do that, I think we're really gonna reap the benefits, and we'll see the changes that we want to see.
Thank you. Well, I would like everybody to thank our panel this morning. And a call out to other moderators today in the room. I finished before my time was up.